Jack and the Beanstalk. Jack and his mother were very poor. All they had was one cow. One day, Jack's mother said, "Go and sell our cow and bring the money back to me." Jack took the cow away to sell. On the way, he met a man who wanted to buy the cow. "I have no money," said the man, "but I will give you 5 magic beans for your cow." "All right," said Jack, and he gave the man his cow. Jack took the beans back to his mother. She was very angry. "These beans are no good to us," she said, and she threw the beans out of the window. The next day, when Jack woke up, he saw a giant beanstalk outside his window. "I want to climb to the top," said Jack. Jack started to climb the beanstalk. "No, Jack, no," said Jack's mother, but Jack climbed up and up and up to the very top of the beanstalk. Jack saw a giant castle with a giant door. When he opened the door, he saw a giant woman. "Look out," said the woman. "My husband is coming. He will eat you up." "Fee, fi, fo, fum. Watch out, everyone. Here I come," roared the giant. "You must hide," said the woman, and she hid Jack in the cupboard. The giant came in and sat down at the table with some giant bags of money. He started to count his money, and Jack watched him from inside the cupboard. Soon, the giant fell asleep. Jack came out of the cupboard and took all the money. Then he climbed down the beanstalk and gave the money to his mother. Not long after, Jack wanted to climb the beanstalk again. "No, Jack, no," said his mother. But Jack said, "I must." Jack saw the giant woman again. "Look out," she said. "My husband is angry because his money has been stolen." "Fee, fi, fo, fum. Watch out, everyone. Here I come," roared the giant. "You must hide in the cupboard," said the woman. The giant came in and sat down at the table. He had with him a magic hen. The magic hen laid golden eggs. Very soon, the giant fell asleep. Jack came out of the cupboard and took the hen. Then he climbed down the beanstalk. The next day, Jack climbed the beanstalk again. At the top of the beanstalk, Jack saw the giant woman. "Look out," said the woman. "My husband is angry because his hen and his money have been stolen." "Fee, fi, fo, fum. Watch out, everyone. Here I come," roared the giant. "You must hide in the cupboard again," said the woman. The giant came in with a magic harp. He sat down at the table and the harp started to play. Soon the giant fell asleep. Jack came out of the cupboard and took the harp. Then he started to climb down the beanstalk. "Run away," said the woman. "The giant is behind you." Jack climbed down the beanstalk with the angry giant behind him. When Jack was at the bottom, his mother cut down the beanstalk. Crash! And that was the end of the giant. Now Jack and his mother were not poor, and they lived happily ever after. School time for Sammy. While his brother and sister got ready for the first day of school, Sammy climbed his favourite tree and swung from branch to branch. Fred called up, "You're old enough to go to school this year, Sammy." "I don't want to go to school. I want to stay home and play," replied Sammy. "But school is fun and you learn all sorts of things," said Sophie. "I'm not going," said Sammy, dangling upside down and pulling a face. "I already know everything. I know how to climb the tallest trees and I can swing really fast, so there." Fred and Sophie rushed off to school. Sammy spent the morning playing but soon got bored. "What's wrong, Sammy?" asked his mother. "There's nobody to play with," said Sammy grumpily. "Well, all your friends are at school," explained his mother. "Maybe you should go too." "No way!" shouted Sammy, scrambling back up the tree. At last, Sophie and Fred returned home, chattering excitedly about their busy day. Sammy ran to greet them. Sammy wanted Fred and Sophie to play with him, but they said they had homework to do. Sammy did not want to be left out. "I can do homework too," he said. "How many days are there in April?" Fred asked Sophie. 25 90 zillion, shouted Sammy. "Oh, Sammy, don't be silly. We're trying to work," said Sophie with a sigh. When Sammy's friend Jack came to visit, he was full of news about school. "The teacher is really nice, and I've learned lots of important things," said Jack proudly. "I know what 2 + 1 + 2 is." "So do I," said Sammy, trying to count on his fingers. "What is it then?" asked Jack. It's a lot," Sammy answered. "I even learned how to write my own name," Jack continued. He picked up a stick and carefully wrote Jack in the dirt. "I can write my name too. Look," said Sammy. "That's just a scribble," scoffed Jack. Poor Sammy felt embarrassed. "What else do you do at school?" asked Sammy. "Well, I made lots of new friends and we all played games together," said Jack. Then Jack told Sammy everything that he had learned. His favourite part of the day was show and tell, where people could bring in special things and share them with the class. "You really did do a lot," said Sammy with a sad sigh. "I'll paint you a picture of a tree if you want," offered Jack to cheer up his friend. "That's another thing I learned today." Sammy watched as Jack brushed paint over a piece of paper. "That's the best picture in the whole world," said Sammy admiringly. When Jack had gone, Sammy tried to draw a tree himself, but his painting just looks like a messy blob. That night at dinner, Sammy was very quiet. He did not feel like eating anything. Sophie and Fred chatted loudly about school. "I got a gold star on my spelling test," bragged Sophie. "I won a race at playtime," said Fred proudly. "Well done, both of you," said their parents. After dinner, Sammy decided that he wanted to be as clever as his brother and sister. So he crept quietly over to Sophie's school bag and slipped out a book. He sat in a corner and tried to read it, but the words just looked like squiggles. When Sophie and Fred found Sammy with the book, they read him the story. It was a thrilling tale about pirates. The next morning, Sammy woke up early. He found his school bag and packed Effalump, his favourite toy, carefully inside. He wanted to have something for show and tell. Sammy marched into the kitchen and announced, "I'm ready." Sammy's family looked up in surprise. "Ready for what, Sammy?" asked his father. "I'm going to school," declared Sammy. "I want to learn how to read and write and count and draw beautiful pictures." "That's wonderful," said his mother. After breakfast, Sammy set off with Sophie and Fred. He made them walk very quickly. "I'm already a day late for school," he said. "I don't want to miss any more." The Elves and the Shoemaker. Once upon a time, there was a poor shoemaker who had no money left to buy food for himself and his wife. When he looked around his shop, he found that all he had was just enough leather to make one pair of shoes. As he carefully cut out the shoes, he wondered sadly if anyone would ever come along to buy them. Then he laid out the leather on his workbench, ready to sew the next day, and went upstairs to bed. In the morning, when he went to his workbench, the shoemaker couldn't believe his eyes. Instead of the leather he had cut out the night before, he saw a pair of fine shoes already made. The shoemaker looked carefully at the shoes. The stitches were small and even, and the shoes had been polished until they shone. He was very puzzled and showed them to his wife. Who could have made the shoes so perfectly? Later that day, a rich woman came into the shop to buy some shoes. When the shoemaker showed her the pair he had found on his workbench, the woman smiled. "These are very fine shoes," she said, as she tried them on. "They fit perfectly. I'll give you 5 pieces of silver for them." Now the shoemaker could buy some food, and he could also buy enough leather for 2 pairs of shoes. As before, he cut out the leather and went to bed. Once again, the same thing happened. When the shoemaker went to his workbench next day, there were 2 pairs of fine shoes waiting for him. They were polished so that they glowed in the sunlight, and the stitches were small and even. That afternoon, a rich merchant came into the shop. He liked the shoes so much that he bought both pairs, and he paid the shoemaker well for them. That day, the shoemaker was able to buy enough leather for 4 pairs of shoes. Just as before, he cut out the leather and left it on his workbench overnight. And in the morning, he found 4 fine pairs of shoes there instead. The same thing happened night after night, and day after day, rich people came to buy the shoes. Soon, the shoemaker and his wife were rich too. One evening, not long before Christmas, the shoemaker said to his wife, "Someone has been helping us all this time, sewing the shoes so beautifully, and we still don't know who it is. How can we find out?" "Well," said his wife, "why don't we stay up tonight and watch?" So after dinner, they lit a candle and went into the shop. They hid behind the counter and waited to see what would happen. At last, the door opened and in ran 2 tiny elves dressed in rags. They went straight to the workbench, picked up the leather lying there and set to work. They sewed and hammered until all the shoes were finished, and they polished every shoe until it shone in the moonlight. Then they ran quickly away. The next morning, the shoemaker said to his wife, "Those elves have been working so hard for us. How can we ever repay them?" "I know," said his wife. "Why don't we make them something warm to wear? Their own clothes were thin and torn, and their little feet were bare. I could start by knitting them little caps, and you could make them some shoes." The shoemaker thought this was a very good idea. That evening, he carefully made 2 pairs of tiny shoes, and his wife knitted 2 little caps. Over the next few days, the shoemaker helped his wife to make all sorts of clothes for the elves. They made some little shirts and trousers and little waistcoats. Finally, the shoemaker's wife knitted 2 tiny pairs of socks. By Christmas Eve, everything stood ready in a little pile. The shoemaker's wife fetched some pretty paper and ribbons, and they wrapped each present one by one. The shoemaker was so pleased with the little shoes he had made that he saved them till last and wrapped them up very carefully. Then they put all the presents out on the workbench and hid behind the counter to wait for the elves. In the middle of the night, the elves dashed in, ready to start work. But when they went to the workbench, all they found was a little pile of presents. The elves looked at each other in surprise. Then they realised the presents were for them, and they laughed and began to unwrap the packages. When they saw the clothes, they leapt with joy. They took off their ragged things and put on their brand new outfits. Then the elves skipped merrily out of the door. That was the last the shoemaker and his wife ever saw of the 2 little men, but they never forgot the elves, and they were rich and happy for the rest of their lives. Thank you for listening, guys. I really hope you enjoyed today's stories, and I'll see you soon.